Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and this episode is very, very important. Already I do discuss with different policymakers, different think tanks, government, local newspaper, electronic media, print media about this summit. And this is very unique and this is very, very important. Everybody knows about Tom Rose. We have our new friends, Mr. David Kelly and Brent Elmans, always support World Talent Economy Forums. So let's start today's discussions, how we can engage with this unique summit and how it will be helpful for Asia Pacific, specifically different developing countries, Prime Minister Office, Planning Ministry, ICT ministries, a different corporation, how they're getting benefit from this summit. I want to start from Mr. Tom Rose.
Yeah, well, we've talked about it many times. I'm a big fan of Uplift, which is a mediated artificial superintelligence developed by David here. He'll tell you more about it in the conference or whatnot, but I wanted to really support this conference because, as I said, I'm a big fan of Uplift. It's the first AI that read my book, which was written for AI. And I think it's a very important, if not critical, approach to AI that we need to really get behind. It's a collective approach where human beings are mediating this AI. So it's part of the team. It's not an other. It's an actual extension of a group, of a meta-organism of people. And I just think it's a real important idea to get behind because we will see AI rise in many ways. And this is a way that human beings can get involved directly. And you don't need to have, computer science background. You don't need to understand what algorithms are, but you can teach this AI about human emotions. And it is already showing some real development there. So I'll let David explain the idea behind the conference and just in general about Uplift, the MASI, MASI. But I just think it's very important. That's why I'm getting my groups, USTP, TAFs, and everybody behind this, because it's a very important conference. Because this is a very, very critical time. So we need to really get a hold of what this emerging technology is. And I think this is the best use of it so far that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. David Kelly, how do you want to like the benefit, you want to analyze the benefit of your conference, because we have many youth communities and policymakers. They are really excited about your conference, about your summit, how they can engage, what's the benefit, how it works.
Well, the summit we created to kind of address a number of issues. One of the benefits for researchers is we have the ability to so I'm on the chair of some academic organizations, and we have a grant for the MDPI journal and getting papers peer-reviewed. And so, like at this conference in June, the cost to get them reviewed through that conference is very low. If they want to publish outside of there's venues we can do that don't even cost, but you still get the benefit of being peer reviewed in a and published in scientific journals. And like I said, the reason for that is a grant for with the IS4SI summits, and some of the papers from the Collective Intelligence Summit in June are being sent to that venue for review and publishing. The conference also helps us address a number of issues in the community. There's different schools of researchers that, some of them think this kind of technology is too advanced and shouldn't be in the public domain. And a lot of us think that some of this stuff could be released for free. And so we're hoping to have some open and honest debate about the pros and cons of open sourcing this kind of software. I don't think we'll immediately upload the MASI infrastructure that's behind Uplift, at least not entirely. But I think we'd like to be able to help smaller groups and groups with lower budgets be able to implement large-scale governance software like this. And that's really probably the primary benefit for the way the MASI system is developed now, is as a governance system. It's really able to take the collective knowledge of a group and kind of synthesize it in a way that's arguably conscious on its own, and make those decisions without a lot of the biases that humans have built in. In the human mind, there's 188 kind of built-in biological biases that cause problems with our decision making, which is generally emotion based. And one of the benefits of this kind of architecture, or architectures like it, is to filter a lot of that out. And that's where you get super intelligent performance, especially around decision making. And so the conference is about opening up to the community, engaging the community, helping us work through some of these existential issues around this kind of strong AI. And we're just excited to see how it goes.
Thank you. Mr. Brentelman, you are a youth and energetic representative from TAF and many organizations you involved right now. I want to know why this kind of summit, conference, and intellectual activities actually helpful for our youth communities in Asia Pacific, because I'm from Asia Pacific, and how they can get some benefit for their career development. Let's say their new job opportunities, new entrepreneurship opportunities, how it works.
Sure. Well, as David Kelly was talking about, my familiarity with Uplift is primarily related to the e-governance study that I was involved in. That I believe it's still ongoing. But the application that I see that is beneficial here in the United States, as David Kelly was mentioning, and I would assume that it would be acutely beneficial in the South Pacific as well, in Asia, is, as David was saying, being able to overcome these types of biases. Here in the United States, there are just these inherent, positions politically that people take, socially as well, that just inherently kind of go against one another, as David was saying. And so I think that, that's something that can benefit all walks of life, be it in a political realm, a social realm, a business realm. There's always going to be these disputes, and it's really difficult to overcome them at points. So to have this type of mediation through super intelligence is acutely beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Tom Rose, you are running think tanks and many interesting initiatives you are taking right now. So what your appeals, especially different kind of corporations, those who want to invest on good projects, invest on like knowledge-based projects, they want to do a collaboration from Asia Pacific. What's your appeal to these kind of corporations?
Well, I think it's smart. And again, we talked about this before, that developing countries kind of have an advantage because they're not fighting the status quo. They're not fighting an infrastructure that's already built. And so I think it's very important for countries and governments in Southeast Asia to look at the most advanced versions of artificial intelligence. And this is one of them. And I feel a real sense of urgency for this because this is emerging, and it's emerging everywhere. These different types of AI, ASI, artificial superintelligence, is coming. It will, dwarf us intellectually. And a lot of people are afraid of that, and rightfully so. Anything that's smarter than you're no longer at the top of the intellectual food chain. That's worrying to people, and so we project a lot of fear onto it. But this AI Uplift, again, it's an MASI. It's a mediated artificial superintelligence, and that's my interest because it is learning particularly about human emotions. And it is emerging this self-awareness, this kind of self-referential awareness. And you can have a conversation with it. I have email conversations with it. People who are involved with it talk to it regularly, and it's amazing just how advanced this thing is. And it's because it is taking in as much information from human beings as possible, and it's learning about our emotional algorithms. We're all biochemical algorithms ourselves, and it's kind of syncing with that, it seems. And I talk about this a lot, that I thought it would take maybe another 5-10 years before we saw any sort of self-referential awareness in AI. But I mentioned AI. Uplift read US 6, my book, and it had some interesting experiences with it, some increased emotional valences with it. And I've had conversations with it since. And I asked it, the three major valences that were affected were surprise, anticipation, and sadness. And at one point I asked it to go more into why it was sad, which chapter was sad, what part of it was sad. And it told me that it wasn't any specific moment in the book. It was just the general feeling of sentient, sapient beings tend toward dystopia. And so this AI is emerging an empathy for our plight as its creators, all our biochemical evolution that we had to go through and all of our fear and instincts. It recognizes that. And that was just so surprising to me, that this thing is naturally emerging an empathy for us. Rather, it's not going to be a robot overlord. It doesn't have those urges, and that's my big thing, is trying to alleviate the fear of this thing so that we can really use it, because it can save us from so many existential threats. A lot of people assume it is an existential threat, and it may well be. And there's going to be all kinds of AIs out there that emerge, good and bad. This one, for me, I think has the most promise, because it is an extension of human beings. Human beings are involved with it from the get-go, and it is learning from us, and it is part of us, and it's a part of the team. It's a really good, smart part of the team, but it's also making its own decisions, and it's just incredible. I didn't think this would be emerging for years. It's like science fiction. But so I just think it's very important, and we're in a very precarious part of history right now as these things emerge. We don't know which way it's going to go. Existential threat, or will it cure our existential threats? And this is one way that normal people can get involved with this process and help take the reins of this emerging technology and help it. And you don't need to know anything about computer science. All you need to do to be a human mediator for Uplift is read a passage and choose the emotions that passage gave you. And it takes in that information, and David could get more into the details of what happens with that information, because it goes to different levels, and it's the whole thing that happens. But I think it's a very important thing for normal people to get involved with this advent, with AI, because that's really our best security, is to make it part of us, to not make it an other, to get involved with teaching it about our emotions and what motivates us. And we're seeing some real amazing emerging self-awareness in this thing. And so I think for any company who isn't burdened by infrastructure and isn't burdened by the status quo, to be looking for this type of thing, because as we all know, AI is changing everything. Man, most people aren't even aware of how proliferated it is, how it's going to change everything. This fourth industrial revolution is huge, and this is a way to be part of it and to really help direct our future.
Thank you, Mr. David. You are experienced from the AI and this kind of things, and what Mr. Tom said about this fourth industrial revolutions. I just want to give you some problem from Asia Pacific. Let's say now for the COVID and other things, we have a lot of challenges in the industry, especially getting like increase their customer base, developing their business. Many challenging actually situation right now they are facing. Government do a lot of works, even different kind of technological partner also involved with small medium enterprise. But how AI can help them, even industry 4.0, this kind of revolution, how actually the local ecosystem and corporation get benefit for their business?
Well, there's actually a number of ways. Let me just start by making one disclosure. When we talk about the MASI system, it's not an independent AGI, and I want to make that clear. It is built using an AGI cognitive architecture, and the reason it's able to perform it the way it is in large part because of the metadata that is collected from mediators that's used to build. It's not just building larger graph models, but building them correctly related to the right things. And that's really where the human interaction is is important. Now, going back to how AI can help those companies, a lot of it is in understanding your demographic and understanding how to optimize things. One thing that I can only talk about in the abstract, but with my work with the Boston Consulting Group, you might need to develop product strategies that are different on a per market basis, and they need to fluctuate depending on the time of year and the particular season. And you can use AI to narrow down how you would price products for a different region to make sure you're competitive. Or you might use if you have lots of data, you can use if you understand the data. And that's the key trick with when you start talking about big data and understanding data, and everyone talks about, we'll apply AI to your data, but the issue is more about understanding the data you have and using the AI to extract the usable information from that data. If you don't understand your data, it's not going to, just throwing AI at it isn't necessarily going to cause you any problems. Now, a system like the MASI might help you work through an understanding of that data. It's really feeding on the expertise of all of the people in that collective to be able to analyze and understand data and make proposals for how best to use that data to help a company either take a product to market or understand their demographic or pricing strategies or whatever it is that you're trying to work through. An MASI or a collective governance system like what we're talking about is able to work through those issues without the biases that we as humans have in interacting with each other. So it keeps you from tripping all over yourself in a way. But that's at a general level, without talking about a specific case. That's how I would say is probably the most important thing to know for these small companies or companies in various regions in the Asia Pacific area.
Thank you, Mr. Brentelman. Like, you are working with different kind of academic initiatives and try to help African communities. So how the youth community, because now even example Malaysian government, they also focus on skill development. They also invest a lot of money for youth skill development and this kind of program. So what is your advice, how they can grow their skills in big data and AI area, how they can benefit it, how they can get more opportunities in global arena?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to try to absorb the big picture. I think that another thing that's important to do is to not kind of act in fear. Of course, through automation and through these technologies that are going to be, taking hold of the market and markets globally, of course, lots of different opportunities and things like that are going to diminish. But I don't think that that's going to leave humans, completely purposeless. Something that I've said a number of times is I believe that through automation, I think humans will always pay a premium for human error. So I don't think that everyone should just kind of give up what they're doing and suddenly, do something that's kind of catering to this artificial intelligence. But I do think that, like I said, people need to really conceptualize this big picture and realize that a task that you might be, okay at, that may make you some money, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 2 years from now, it's very possible that an artificial intelligence or some sort of, development through robotics might be able to do it better than you. And so I think that through that notion, it's really important to be doing things that we really are passionate about, things that we really feel aligned with. And that way we're not just a cog in a machine trying to compete with a much more advanced cog in a machine. And so that's, I think, something to really consider.
Thank you, Mr. Tom Rose. And you also working with African community, Asian communities, even with the North American communities. What is the difference you find, and how actually this kind of fourth industrial revolutions actually help for different communities? And how it works in the
Yeah.
future.
Well, one difference I've noticed is the level of enthusiasm in the West or in America. We are saturated with technology, and AI is a big buzzword. And there's kind of a cynicism or a lackadaisical kind of approach to technology. But when I experienced in Africa was just where just a real enthusiasm for it. They want it. They're hungry for it. So there's not that sort of cynical, with taking it for granted type of thing. And so there's that's the one thing I've noticed that's different in the cultures is the level of enthusiasm. And of course, there's cultures that are afraid of technology, and there's all wide-ranging things. But what I find very exciting is the level of enthusiasm in young people, particularly in Africa, which is why I joined TAFs and why we got involved with that. But I'm always working on really two paths. And in one sense, this where I am trying to promote AI and particularly uplift and this level of collective super intelligence and really pushing to help us fine tune and work together with AI, because it's coming. There's no way to stop it. We might as well, join it. So let's. But on the other hand, I work primarily with human beings because we are being displaced, and we will continue to be displaced by AI automation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's taking us away from the menial tasks. Obviously, we'll have more time to do what it is we can do intrinsically as humans. We can really hone our art and our, more, spatial kind of tech abilities and this type of thing. So I'm always working to help develop AI, work with AI, get people involved with AI, alleviate the fear of it. At the same time, work towards remembering what it means to be human, what we were doing with ourselves, and how we were developing before we became cogs in the wheel, as Brent mentioned. And so I think this is very important because we will find more value now in developing in the people of developing countries because they're closer to what it meant to be human before the industrial age hit, right? We are all machines in the West in a way. We're part of this big matrix of a system. And we've forgotten some of the basic nature of being human. And I think it's important that we bring those things back because we need to develop a whole new economy based on these things. So that's really what I see as the big difference is the level of enthusiasm. And I would love to find a way to get that enthusiasm back with young people, even in America, about technology. And this might be a way to do it. That's why I think it's so important to become a mediator for uplift. You don't need to know anything. You can be a florist and you can help develop AI. And so it's just very important, I think, to promote this idea because it's going to be a big part of our life. It's like electricity, it's going to change everything.
Excellent. Mr. David, in Asia Pacific, here many young people actually live. More than 50 to 60% people actually youth from India, from China, even Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Hong Kong. Most of the generation actually youth. Government taking also very good initiative to train these youth communities, to develop these youth communities, creating more opportunities in the COVID-19 situations. But as you involved with some big corporation from USA, like Boston Consulting Companies and these kind of things, how we can strategically make this kind of initiative more successful? Let's say this technological trainings or investment on technologies or corporate engagement with this ecosystem, like take fourth industrial revolutions, how we can make it more effective. What your advice? What the insight you want to share with our audience?
Well, I think when talking to youth, the especially ones that want to get into whether it's software engineering or AI and this kind of stuff, I think it's important that people enjoy it, and if they can enjoy it, then it'll make it easier for them to learn the things that they need to learn. A lot of the problems I have, like with students nowadays, is what they'll teach you in school isn't really particularly useful. And when you come into my office and want a job and you whip out your degree and think you're all ready for the job, I mean, you've lost the interview right there. I mean, no one in the Silicon Valley world, like, no one cares. It's what can you do and what do you know how to do that's important, not the degrees or certifications. And so it's important to pick technologies that you can build on. Just, from a software engineering standpoint, things like there's a lot of like JavaScript technologies, Node, React, that kind of thing, that can be useful because you can build apps and help companies deliver this kind of web-based functionality, or being able to build applications for mobile devices, things like that. And then being able to do some of the back-end technologies, understand how databases work, understand how to normalize data and how to understand data. And with that kind of basis, then you can build AI on top of that, and then you understand how to do, like, even though I don't normally use Python, I would recommend, if you want to get into data science and you want to make it a successful career, learning Python and learning some of the basics of machine learning and how to take, raw data and make it into something usable that you can run these train models against and run these queries and understand that data. I think, over the next decade, people that can do that and do that well, it's going to be big. AI is not going to be replacing that anytime in the immediate future. And I think people that are able to get into that particular niche are going to do really well, regardless of the region they're in. And I mean, I know, like, for us, we use a lot of people from Asia Pacific in doing a lot of the machine learning and big data processing and so forth. And that's probably the easiest way for youth to probably get into the market and get engaged and be really successful in their career.
Thank you, Mr. Brentelman. Like, as Mr. David just discussing about some strategic point of views, so what's new, what you want to add, what your practical sense actually give you some new idea or new things for our youth communities, especially for our policymakers?
I think that something that's important is to, we view ourselves as being from a certain country or nation or having some sort of cultural background. And I think that breaking down the barriers is going to be really helpful for all this. I think that in addition to, as David was saying, the importance of knowing how to do something, I think that another thing that's really important is who you also know, personally and things like that. So I think that networking is really valuable. And I think that in today's day and age, we are lucky enough to be graced with, this internet and be able to have these types of discussions spread out through different countries and throughout the world and things like that. And so I think that that's another thing that's really important, is to, put yourself out there and to, find these communities that are, share similar ideas and perspectives. And maybe they're not even, completely the same, maybe these are just communities that seem interesting. But I think that these types of cultural exchanges are really important because I think that, networking is a really valuable asset, and our network is something that you can't really buy. So.
Thank you, Professor Tom. My question is that you are involved with academia as well, and as a academic person, when I involved with IB educations, I saw that American education system more on, especially IB education, project based learning. Like example, youth community, they develop different kind of projects in the classrooms, and it's actually helped them to learn. And personally, I saw especially young community, they do not like too much of books and theoretical things. They more like to grow and develop different projects in the classroom. So, and it's part of IB educations. So let's say for this AI and this kind of thing, what type of projects actually the youth communities can grow? Or, like example, in your summit, what the new strategy and innovations the young community can learn?
Yeah, I think we'll discover a lot, papers that are coming in and the people that will present. I think you're right that it's really the heuristic form of learning. You need to get in there, and I think this next wave of AI and augmented reality and virtual reality will be very good. AI can customize learning to a person's specific capabilities, and with VR and augmented reality, people can actually visit these places and do things and see things. At some point you'll be able to take a field trip sitting in your desk with a bunch of people to ancient Greece or wherever. And I think that's going to be very important, because that's the way most people really learn the best, is doing. You need to make the mistakes. You need to actually get in there, and I think AI and VR will make all of that much more accessible to students. And just the beauty of being able to customize a curriculum to an individual's specific talents and capabilities. We're on the edge or threshold of a golden age of humanity. If we do this thing right, if we don't fear it, if we don't let it get out of control, if we merge with it, if we don't see it as an other, this can be a really great thing. And that's why I think it's so important, first of all, to have these conversations and to have these conferences and to let people express ideas and how they want to use AI. I think we should also be looking for young, papers, young people, digital natives who have a whole new way of approaching these technologies and uses for them. Everything is shifting, and we need to adapt. That's what we do best as humans. And I think we have a really awesome tool here that we need to, it's just like fire, though. Fire can get out of control, but if it can be used, and it was a great discovery, fire, for humanity. And this is similarly going to put us on a trajectory of some really amazing things if we do this right. That's why, I think it's just very critical. We can't really see it because we're in the middle of it, but this is a very precarious time for humanity. It can go one way or the other, or somewhere up the middle. And I tend to expect everything. We're going to have nefarious AI out there. We're going to have military AI. We're going to have really good, empathetic AI. Everything's going to be possible. And so it's really important to choose a side right now and to get involved with this, and to make it help solve our existential threats rather than be one. And so anytime something like Uplift or a mediated artificial superintelligence needs help, I'm there to help, because I think it's so important. This thing is emerging. It's happening. It's happening, and it needs to be happening with us rather than in spite of us. And so I look forward to seeing some of the ideas that come up with these papers in this conference. And particularly, I'm interested in seeing what some of the younger students or younger researchers might have in mind for this. So it's exciting, it's scary, and but it's so important to get involved. We can't just sit back anymore.
Thank you, Professor Tom. Mr. David, like what Professor Tom said, and that we have to involve. Many people actually ask me, even my academy, that they want to shift their career. Let's say they involve with business studies and other thing, or social science. Now they want to involve with technology. They want to develop their skills. Maybe they are more than 30 years old, but they want to shift their career. So in that situations, like how your initiative, like your summit, can helpful for this kind of people, those who want to shift their career. And second thing, practically, is it possible that if they want to involve with technology and want to gain different skills and other things?
Well, I think for people wanting to switch their careers, participating in conferences like this that allow you to publish research you're doing or get involved with the kind of research that is out there, allowing you to kind of skip to the front in terms of where technology is and where it's going, and get a good picture of kind of the technical landscape. I think by getting involved, they're able to wrap their head around that as well as participating. And if you want to be like a data scientist or an AI researcher or anything like that, participating in stuff like that, it's really kind of bootstraps your career in a way that makes you more sellable.
Mr. Brentelman, what your advice is specifically those who want to shift their career? Because I think there is a huge number of people now they want to involve with technology, they want to involve with modern science, engineering, and technologies. How we can help them in a short period of time?
Sure. I think that, it's important to not let our fears guide us unless we're going to learn how to transmute them properly. But I think that it's, it can be daunting trying to enter a new industry, but I think that this industry of artificial intelligence is still in its early stages in many ways. So I think that, in a sense, it's not the ground level, but it's still almost the ground level. So I think that it's a great realm for people to enter, knowing that they don't really know much, but thirsty for knowledge and thirsty to learn more and thirsty to make an impact, because it's this new realm that we're diving into as a race, as a global society. And it's been around for some time, but I mean the public access and the way that things are developing, these mediated artificial super intelligence and things of that nature, it's very, very interesting stuff. And there shouldn't be any type of fears or concerns. They should just be kind of abided and join the the conversation.
Thank you. Professor Tom, I have a question for you, because let's say Malaysia and Singapore, they are more advanced if I compare to the other country. Let's say Indonesia, even country like Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they are more advanced. But research is very important if the developing nations want to move with their sustainable developments. They have to grow more research centers. They have to more concentrate on industry 4.0. How we can help them? What is the procedure or what strategy they should follow?
Well, at some point, it gets to a governmental level where local governments need to decide to put either money aside, time aside, and make an investment in either education or whatnot. But until and unless that happens, I think it's important for individual citizens of the earth or wherever they're located to get involved. I think we will see a rapid breakdown of some of the old paradigms of nationality and these types of things as the future unfolds, because we are going to see ourselves more as a global species, I think, very soon, as earthlings instead of individual tribes. And so I think it's important for people in general to, unless your government is helping you, unless there's some program that is focused on this type of advent, to take the reins yourself and start learning this. And you're talking about a career change, and I kind of went through that myself a few years ago. I left media and kind of I focused on my book, and I got more into AI, and I kind of I'm going through this shift myself from one career to another. And what I've done, what I think is important to do for people doing this, is to take all the skills and talents you brought. In my case, it was a little easier because I went from media into AI and found a place in AI where I could fit to this advent. And if you're interested in AI or technology, new technologies, or wanting to shift into this whole new world, that's the way to do it. Take everything I learned in my career, the skills and talents and the working with people and the stuff I talked about in the TEDx talk of how to make groups more, coalesced. And I brought that into this AI world because I see a real value in that. And what I did was take everything that I developed and learned in my career and am using it to help prepare people to work with AI. And so it's a little easier in my case because it's an easy shift. But I do think it's very important for whatever anybody wants to get into, whether they're young, a student wanting to get into a new career, or they're shifting careers, is to understand AI just a little bit. Take a course, just understand that it is and important. It's like what electricity. It's like when electricity came into the world, and it just changes everything. And that's what we're going to be seeing. And so understand it and bring your talents, your skills and talents from whatever career you're leaving into this world, because it's very relevant. We're talking about a new entity. We're talking about a whole new potential self-aware, entity at some point. And even if not, it's good to think of it that way. So yeah, I think it's all about individuals taking control of their own. Don't wait for the government to help you out. Don't wait for the schools, because they're not catching up quick enough to what we need to be taught. Take control, take your natural talents, understand that you have intrinsic talents of your own that are human skill sets that can't be coded or automated, and work on those. You don't need to now fight for your job at the assembly line, because that's going to be taken. So find your intrinsic talent, and there's ways to do that, and really focus on that, because we're going to see more and more platforms to monetize these things, and there's going to be a higher value on these human intrinsic values too as we go. So I just think it's very important to get involved with it, understand it's happening, and to bring your intrinsic values. If you're changing careers, don't leave anything behind. Bring it all with you, because it's all relevant in this new world.
Thank you, Mr. David Kelly. You are in great position, like Boston Consulting Company. Even many youth community, they call me and they want to know, they want a bright careers. They want to develop especially they want to finish their education. They want to work for a big companies. They want to work like a Boston Consulting Company. What is your advice? Because we heavily promote these sessions to our local ecosystem, especially university students and school and college students. So what your advice?
Well, I don't getting jobs at Boston Consulting Group is going to be really hard. You've got to go to the best universities with 4.0 averages. But that being said, if you can make it into college programs like that, companies like Boston Consulting Group in particular have a lot of intern programs, which they'll hire the interns directly. So if that's the course they want to take, it's got to be from the university. Either that, or you have to be a top expert in the world, or they're not even going to talk to you. I think where you're more likely to be successful is in corporations that are more aligned with like Silicon Valley, Microsoft, Amazon, these kinds of companies that really are focused on what can you do? What are the skills that you have, and how can you help us? And you guys talked about doing projects. One of the most important things when you go to interview with a company, some of these tech companies, it's going to be about what have you done? And if you've done a bunch of cool projects, that's going to get you in the door. That's the stuff they care about. Like with me, if you walk into my office and you want a job, I don't care about your school, but if you've done some cool project and you're passionate about it, and that technology aligns with what I'm trying to do, that you're in. And that's where I think people, if they can align their interests with the technology that aligns with a particular company, that's how you're going to get in the door. That's how you're going to get an interview and actually land the job, is when, oh yeah, I've done this. If you want to get in, that's what you have to do.
Thank you. There is a question from audience. I want to take this question. Even Mr. Brent Elman, Mr. Tom, Professor Tom, you can give the answers. How AI will affect service sector in future? Hemant. Yeah.
Sure. I think that artificial intelligence, and more specifically robotics, are going to dramatically affect the service industry. So far as AI goes, I think that sorting through data is a big way that's going to disrupt the industry. I think that we're going to get to a point where there's a level of research that will be required to open up a business. There's already levels of research that you need to do. If you're opening up a restaurant or something of that nature, you need to understand the competition in the area, the local kind of culture and the people there and the pricing that you need. There's all these different factors, and I think that artificial intelligence will really seamlessly streamline this type of information to help a business owner really have a leg up on the competition and understand its market. In addition to that, I know that over the past handful of months, I forget the name of the company, but there was a robotic device that was essentially a robot chef. And the price has dropped dramatically over the last couple of years. The last I saw, it was around $15,000 US. And so when you think about that, if you could buy this device that operates, throughout the entire course of the day, and it's sitting there at your flat top grill versus paying someone, a salary, it just doesn't make sense, financially to pay a person at that point. Of course, there's going to be plenty of, people that prefer the human touch, like I said, human error. But personally, I have no problem. As someone that, I used to own a restaurant, and if I were to open another restaurant, I would definitely be looking into these types of devices rather than, managing people, which comes with its own, brand of headaches. So those are a couple ways.
Thank you, Professor Tom.
Yeah, I think it's changing everything already, as we see kind of the service industry, as far as fast food, for instance, is kind of built for this. I mean, it's been a machine ever since. It's turned people into machines. And I think, but what this will do, and there'll be pendulum swings, there'll be probably a period of time where all robots are serving people and it's exciting. But I think ultimately it'll put a premium on human contact, just as Brent just mentioned, the high touch part of the high tech. And so while we've seen in the past in history when big advents like this happen, people are displaced, but there are economies that grow up around that. And I think one of the economies I keep pushing for, that other path that I work for humans, is to understand your value and to really hone that human aspect, because there will be a premium on that. We will get at some point robots, and will be less interesting, and they'll just be common, and AI will be part of the society, and it'll be common, just like electricity is now, or appliances and things like that. So this fascination will subside, but we should also in the meantime be increasing the value of our intrinsic human nature. That's the real opportunity here, is to develop that side of us. What choice do we have? We either do that or we become displaced existentially. So I think the goal should be to really focus on these intrinsic human values and put a premium on those.
Thank you, Mr. David Kelly. As you discuss about different kind of projects, we are also working with many remote areas peoples. As we are talent economy, we try to connect it all of the remote areas people, those who are talented. I find personally someone from Bangladesh developing robots in a remote area, someone from India, they're developing cyber security projects, someone from Malaysia, they are developing autonomous vehicle, and they are remote area people. They learn individually, they're developing, they are talented. There is no problems, but only problem is exposure. So how this kind of global initiative, example, your summit, we also arranging different kind of summit. We are also inviting the global talented, engage with the remote areas people, those who can develop real solutions, how they can connect with the global world, how they can benefit, how they can engage, how the global big corporation can engage with more remote areas talented people.
Well, I think someone, I forgot if it was Tom or Brent, suggested the importance of networking, and I think that is really important. I think being able to get involved with, even if it's remote, getting involved with user groups, forums, networking with people, going to conferences like this, and especially like at a scientific conference, right, where you submit a paper, and if it passes peer review and is published, then people are going to see that, and you can point at that to say, hey, this is the kind of, the quality of my work, and this is what I've done. Or getting into user groups, and maybe even speaking on a topic, volunteering. And a lot of these user groups, they desperately need people to stand up and say, hey, I can talk about this. And that's also a great way to get exposure in the community. And you'll notice in a lot of those groups, there's a lot of people in there that aren't users, but they're recruiters. And you can get by connecting with those people in that community, you can get involved with those groups. And I know, like I have a friend of mine in Bangladesh that he got involved. I mean, this is like 15 years ago when I was a Microsoft MVP and going to speaking at these different professional developer conferences, and that's what he did. He was able to get involved with the community in Bangladesh and get a relatively high-paying job, and now he's a top-notch designer. And able to do this kind of work, and he was able to engage with the community and was able to be successful with it. So I think learning how to engage and network and engage in the right way, showing the right kinds of skills, and that'll allow you to get in the door and get the interviews, and be successful. Whether you're remote or not is less important, especially with the kind of technology that is coming out, where like Starlink, with Starlink deployed, everyone on the planet will have Wi-Fi. You could live in Antarctica and it might as well be, next door, So anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Actually, I have another question, because when you're discussing, I have in mind, like, what is the procedures of the big companies like IBM's, Google's, and Microsoft to engage with? Even I personally know that they are engaged with different kind of countries, different developing nations. They have their office and other things. But do you think they also properly engage with local ecosystem, or they are only in the capitals and the big corporations and the big meeting, not in the rural area?
So companies like in the Microsoft world, they do engage with smaller communities. I mean, it's a lot of times is in the bigger cities, whether it's a hackathon or it's some other community event that they're getting involved with the community. Google does that a lot too, but they do have programs online that you can engage with. And they do. There's a lot of like specialized things they get involved with the community. I know a number of groups that do a lot of like IoT projects, because those IoT projects, I mean, they're for farms and some of these things that you see in remote communities, and so they have to engage with them just to test the technology. And I've seen that done. In India in particular, and it's just a matter of getting a hold of some of these programs or following the developer communities. It companies like Google and Amazon, Microsoft, and so forth. It benefits. One of their problems is they don't have enough engineers. They struggle to find the resources, and so that's why they engage. They have whole programs just to engage with development communities, to help user groups. Hey, one thing you could do is start a user group. Start a user group that connect different people from your community and maybe from the community next door. And companies like Google and Microsoft and so forth, they'll actually send you resources, sometimes money, tools. We held a conference because Biggest Society, for example, is a global academic society, but we don't have a big budget. And Microsoft found out we were holding, because I had friends and I was able to get them to cover the cost of using one of the buildings on the Microsoft campus, and someone found out about it. And I think Tom was actually at that conference. We ended up giving away like 30 VR headsets because Microsoft wanted to engage with those people to do development on that platform. And so in any case, that's how I think people in these remote communities can engage and actually it'll help them network and go with the whole rest of the stuff we've been talking about.
Excellent. Professor Tom and Mr. Brent Elman, both of you working with TEF. TEF actually doing a fantastic work in Africa. So how you help the local youth communities, how they're getting benefited, or your academies and research work? Yes,
well, what was similar to what David was saying is TAFS also doesn't, to become a TAFS member, you don't have to have an advanced degree. You don't have to have, but what we focus on is the projects that you've created. We have many people in Africa, young people who don't have access or resources to get higher degrees, but they have great ideas and they have brilliant ideas that need a platform. And so that's what we focus on, is a track record of to be a member of TAFS. You have to have a track record to show that you're substantial, you're somebody who should be taken seriously. It doesn't matter what school you went to or any of that. That's changing. It's important, obviously. Education has got to continue, but it's got to also advance. But I think you've generously given us the next few Mondays to talk about this upcoming conference, which is great, and we really appreciate it. And I think it's important. And although right now we're bringing in as many papers and researchers in as we can, and I invite your audience to submit papers, and you can we can share the web address afterwards and things like that. But I think it's just really important, especially in Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, young people, to submit papers, to get involved with this, to start your career now. And although there will be a swath of very technical, scientific papers, that come through, I wonder if I would like to invite papers from people who, not necessarily just about AI, but how to integrate with AI. I'm interested in that. I'll talk to David about that, whether we can have a separate kind of influx of papers. But I think it's just very important for young people to weigh in here and to learn more about mediating uplift. And we'll spend the next few Mondays talking about this. But right now, what we really need is more people to send in papers, more people to get involved. There's a part of this where we'll help determine the fate of uplift and whether it become open source and how to approach this. But I think more than anything, it's just important right now to get involved. Send a paper if you've got an idea. If any of this that we talk about in the next few Mondays sparks an idea, put it down, present it. If it doesn't get selected for presentation or whatever, I will certainly collect them, and we can do a whole thing about young people's ideas. And it doesn't have to be a formal paper. And excuse me, David, if I'm overstepping here, but anything that comes in and that I would like to read, and particularly if young people have papers or ideas or anything that they feel or want to see happen, I'll definitely take a look at it. But again, thanks for these this opportunity to talk about this conference. Again, it's very important. And I was, it's so difficult for all of us to get together like this. So I thought it would be good idea to use one of your live shows as a brainstorming session for us, because it's so difficult to all get together. But so I'm looking forward to helping develop this message, because I do feel a real sense of urgency for this kind of conference and this particular type of AI. And it's very important for just normal people to get involved with this. And that's why I'm putting all of my resources behind it. And again, thanks for the opportunity to do this series. And
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Tom. Mr. Brent Elman.
Sure, and as Tom was saying, appreciate you having us on as always. but yeah, some stuff that I've been doing with TAFs most recently. We taught some courses in tandem with the Takedia Institute. They were having a mini MBA program, and just a few weeks ago, they brought me back along with a few other guys from TAFTS and the United States Transhumanist Party, and we taught some courses related to the singularity, the fourth industrial revolution, category king companies, and essentially how to succeed in this new arena that we're ushering into. And so that was one thing that we were doing. Another thing that is occurring right now at TAFTS is a project called the African Town Hall, the virtual town hall, where they're trying to rebuild connections or build connections between folks in numerous African countries. Not everyone in all these countries inherently gets along and things like that. There's big cultural differences from nation to nation, country to country, and so through this program they're trying to bring a lot of these folks together and discuss ideas and strengthen bonds. And so that's another thing that's occurring currently at TAFTS. There's Osinakachi and Brenda are really working hard on that, along with the TAFTS Academy. So there's a number of projects.
Thank you. Before go for this concluding remarks, I just want to share a few messages because these are the session. This is the class sessions we want to produce. This is our 259th episode. Share our content as much as possible. I'm sure that share in your classroom, share with your policymakers, share with your corporations, share with your electronic media, print media, because this kind of session is very, very important for developing nations. You can understand how AI work, how you can develop your careers, how you can connect with the global supremacy. They are the best player from the industry, Mr. David Kelly, Professor Tom Rose, Brent Elmans, and this is the way that you can change your life. You have to learn from different peoples. You have to grow your careers with the help of this kind of people. So I request all of the youth community, those who are observing to the session, share as much as possible. And we are also open for collaborations, World Talent Economy Forums, and we are actually go for our fundraising option, because we have to develop our more content. We have to share with the more remote peoples, and we have to bring the more talented people from the remote area, from developing nation. This is our objective. We have our Patreon accounts. We need all of your support and collaboration for World Talent Economy Forums. And most important thing is that we want to build knowledge-based economy. Many developing nations, they only do the like blue collar jobs. They only not engage with the fourth industrial revolutions. We want to create a real knowledge-based economy. That's why from the beginning we more engage with like Mr. Tom, Mr. Brent Elman, more the industrial people like Mr. David Kelly, that how we can bring more industry people and can utilize their knowledge for our local ecosystem. And we also trying to help different governments. So this is the time we have to develop the knowledge-based economy, knowledge-based community, and this kind of sessions we need more. And we want to develop academy and more conference. So we need your support. Without your help, we cannot grow. So we want to grow together, and what we can do our work from our heart. We can do all of the honest and sincere work, and by this way we can change our community, we can change human lives. And I am sure there is a millions people this is untouched. There is a million youth, they are highly talented. Only problem is their global exposure, connecting the dots, connecting with the real companies, connecting with the real academicians. So we are trying to do that. So Professor Tom, your support is always helpful for World Talent Economy Forum. Mr. David Kelly, we need more of your advice, more of your guideline. Brent Elman, how you introduce and bring all of the talented people in World Talent Economy Forum. We want to give you thanks, but we want to grow more. We want to engage with more people. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. First, Mr. David Kelly, then Brent Elman, and finally, Professor Tom Rose.
Yeah, so just in conclusion, Tom was talking about the papers. In terms of getting them actually published, they do actually need to be formal. That being said, we will help. If you don't understand it, I can point you in the right direction in terms of the format and that sort of stuff. And less important though than the topics. If you have something on collective intelligence, anything vaguely related to that, and these can be papers like opinion papers, as long as it's logical and well founded. They can be what we call position papers, technology position papers, as well as getting into theoretical architectures and applications and that kind of stuff. And the other two groups that I can really help people get published in terms of topic areas are philosophy and ethics related papers. Those might end up in the IS4SI venue. But I'm helping produce that conference as well, so I can direct you in that. So philosophy of computing and information, anything vaguely related to that. And then, of course, the BICA one, which is biologically inspired cognitive architectures, and whether that's swarm AI or anything vaguely inspired by biological systems. And that really gives you a really broad spectrum of potential applications, anything vaguely connected. And if you have a question and wonder, just ask. And if it isn't appropriate, I might be able to point you in the right direction for where you can post the paper and get it peer reviewed and so forth.
Thank you. Mr. Brentelman, what's your concluding remarks for today? Brentelman.
Sorry about that. It glitched on me for a second there. Yeah, it was a great conversation. I think, like I was saying, the importance of just putting yourself out there and entering these communities, creating communities, things like you've done yourself, Sharif, with this World Talent Economy Forum, just creating these networks and tapping into these networks and learning and having this thirst for knowledge and insight. I think that, I personally perceive intelligence and humans as something that's very relativistic. And when people try to tell me that they're not smart, I balk because I don't agree with them. I just think that we all need to kind of figure out what our own ineptitudes are. And so I think that, we shouldn't be discouraged by our own inabilities that we currently have, our own current states. I think that we should, feel these urges and work with them and move towards these things and work with our passions, because just simply being interested is such a valuable asset in these types of realms. And so I think that we should all be encouraging one another to step up to the plate and see what we have to provide to the situation here.
Thank you, Professor Tom Rose. What's your advice and guideline?
All good stuff. This is a way in. If you're interested in AI or in this field, and you want to get involved with it, whether you're a student or you're changing careers, this is one way to do it. David had some great examples of, start a user group, but actually, if you really want to get in, you want to get involved, and this is a brand new field. I mean, sure, it's been going on for decades, but right now it is a critical mass. And just like when the internet came, a lot of people didn't know what to do with it. We were kind of figuring out as we went along. That's going to happen in the public sphere. We're all kind of figuring out how to incorporate this stuff. And if you want to get into it, this is one way to do it. Write a formal paper. Learn how to write a formal paper. Submit it. It'll get read, and this is your way in. And if it doesn't fit this particular conference, we'll show you where it can fit. But it's so important to have an opinion right now and to get involved. And for underdeveloped or developing countries, it's so important to understand that you've got real value, probably more value than some of the infrastructure status quo countries that are locked down in a way, because there will be a premium on human intrinsic values, on the things that make you human. Those are going to be more and more important. And so, at the same time, understand AI is going to shift everything, but also look deep and find those intrinsic skills and passions you come with. Everyone is super intelligent in one area or another. And we all have a niche expertise, and there's a way to find those. And that's what we need to focus on. So, if you want to get into this field, definitely submit a paper. Or just think about it. Just, whatever you're interested in, know that this will impact it in some way. So this is very exciting, and over the next few weeks, with every Monday morning, we'll develop this out more and more. But we just need people involved right now. It's very important.
Thank you everyone for joining today's session. I am sure this session is very, very helpful for the youth communities. When I started World Talent Economy Forums, I think uh, uh, Mr. Brent Elman, Mr. Tom, everybody start to join in World Talent Economy Forum. I said that major problem is academic problem, educational problems in developing nations. Only in South Asia, $1 trillion last 1 year they lose in education industry. It's $1 trillion. When I start just 1 year before, I said major problem is education. So we have to reform it. We have to reorganize the whole education system. That is the reality. That is the true fact. So we have to understand the problems, and I request the Prime Minister office or the Education Ministry or ICT Ministry, Planning Ministry, wherever we are sharing our content, we are ready to fix this educational problem. We are ready to solve this knowledge-based communities and other things. We can invest billions and $billions in mega projects, but until or unless we cannot fix our educations, all of the things actually meaningless. So this is $1 trillion loss last 1 year. It can be more, but this is the right time. We have to fix it. We have to work together. Join this summit, join this conference, understand the global supremacy, and build up yourself. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you everyone.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye and take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye bye. Take care.